Lieutenant Eric Wade checked his datapad for the third time that hour, confirming what he already knew. Nothing unusual. The border station hummed with its typical quiet tension, a place where two civilizations met but rarely spoke. He walked along the observation deck, watching stars shimmer through the reinforced glass. The ceasefire had held for 6 months now. 6 months of careful distance, measured words, and an unspoken agreement that both humans and Veltrans would keep to their own sides. Eric's job was simple enough. Watch the neutral zone. Report any violations. Keep the peace through careful observation and nothing more. His communicator chirped, a distress signal, automated and urgent, coming from just inside the neutral corridor. Eric's heart rate picked up as he pulled up the sensor data, a small transport vessel Velthran design showing critical system failures. It was losing altitude fast, heading straight for the rocky planetoid that marked the border. Protocol was clear. Alert both sides. Do not intervene. Let the Velthrans handle their own emergencies. Eric watched the ship spiral downward, its engines sputtering. He could see small figures through the cockpit window, moving frantically. His fingers hovered over the alert button. The ship hit the surface hard, metal screaming against rock. Fire bloomed from the rear compartment. He was running before he made a conscious decision. The emergency suit sealed around him as he sprinted to the docking bay. His commanding officer's voice crackled through his helmet. "Wade, what are you doing?" "Stand down. That's an order." "There are people in that ship, sir," Eric said, firing up his transport pod. "I can reach them in 3 minutes. They're enemy civilians."
"We have protocols. They're civilians."
"I have protocols, too." Eric launched before he could be locked out of the system. The crash site came into view quickly. The transport had split open like a cracked egg, its contents spilling across the gray rocks. Eric touched down 30 meters away and ran toward the wreckage. Smoke made everything hazy. He could hear voices, sharp and frightened, speaking in the clicking, melodic Velthran language. 3 adults stumbled from the main compartment, supporting each other. They saw Eric and froze. Their faces showed confusion and fear. Eric raised his hands slowly, keeping his movements calm and clear. "I'm here to help," he said, knowing they probably didn't understand. He pointed to himself, then to them, then to his transport. The universal language of rescue. One of them, an older male with gray markings along his neck, pointed back at the ship. He made a sound like breaking glass. Urgent. Desperate. Eric moved past them and peered into the tilted compartment. A support beam had collapsed, pinning down a section of passenger seating. Underneath it, he could see small hands pushing weakly against the metal. A child. Eric didn't hesitate. He climbed inside, the floor unstable beneath his feet. The fire was spreading from the engine section. He could feel the heat through his suit. The beam was too heavy to lift alone, but there was a hydraulic jack in the emergency kit attached to the wall. Eric grabbed it and positioned it carefully. The child whimpered. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 in human years. Her large, dark eyes watched him with pain and terror. Blood seeped from a gash on her forehead. Her breathing came in short, sharp gasps. "It's okay," Eric said softly, working the jack under the beam. "I've got you. You're going to be fine." She probably didn't understand his words, but she seemed to understand his tone. Her hand reached out and gripped his glove. Eric activated the jack. The beam groaned and lifted slowly. He pulled the child free as gently as he could.
She cried out in pain.
Her left leg was badly injured. Eric carried her out of the wreckage just as the fire reached the fuel cells. The older Velthran male rushed forward, reaching for the child, but Eric was already moving to his transport, the girl cradled carefully in his arms. He grabbed the medical kit and laid her on the deck. The wound was serious. Compound fracture. Possible internal bleeding. Eric's hands moved quickly, applying pressure bandages and stabilizing her leg. The girl's eyes fluttered. She was going into shock. "Stay with me," Eric said, checking her pulse. Different biology, but the basics were the same. Keep her warm, keep her breathing, stop the bleeding. He heard engines overhead. Big ones. Military grade. Eric looked up to see 3 Velthran warships dropping through the atmosphere, their weapon systems very clearly active in tracking his position. The transport bay opened and soldiers poured out, surrounding Eric's position within seconds. Their rifles were pointed directly at him. He kept his hands visible, but he didn't move away from the child. A commander stepped forward, her uniform marked with symbols Eric recognized as high rank. Her scales were deep blue with silver patterns. Her eyes were fixed on the child lying on the deck. Those eyes were filled with something Eric understood completely. Fear. The raw, terrible fear of a parent seeing their injured child. I'm helping her, Eric said clearly. She needs immediate medical attention. The commander's weapon came up, aimed at his chest, but her eyes stayed on the girl. She barked orders in rapid Velthrin. 2 soldiers moved forward cautiously. Eric slowly stepped back, hands still raised. The commander knelt beside the child, speaking in soft, urgent tones. The girl's hand lifted weakly. "Mama?" she whispered. The commander's expression broke for just a moment, then her training reasserted itself.
She looked at Eric, her weapon steady.
She spoke in careful, accented English. "You did this?" I pulled her from the crash. I stabilized her injuries as best I could. Eric gestured to his medical kit. "She needs a hospital. Soon." The commander studied him for a long moment. Eric could feel dozens of weapons trained on him. One word from her, and he would be dead before he hit the ground. The seconds stretched out. "Why?" she finally asked. Eric looked at the child, then back at the commander. "Because she needed help." The commander's eyes narrowed. Then she lowered her weapon. Sharp orders sent her soldiers into motion. A medical team rushed forward with equipment. They began working on the girl immediately, their movements professional and quick. The commander stood and faced Eric fully. "I am Commander Solara. This is my daughter Kira, Lieutenant Eric Wade. You will come with us, Lieutenant Wade. Kira will need someone she trusts while she recovers. You will be that person." It wasn't a request. Eric looked at the warships overhead, then at the small girl being loaded onto a medical stretcher. She was looking at him, her hand still reaching out. He nodded. "I understand." "No," Solara said quietly. "You do not, but you will." The Velthrin medical ship was larger than Eric expected. The interior was smooth and curved, designed for a species that valued flow over sharp angles. Guards escorted him through corridors that hummed with energy, their weapons never quite pointing at him, but never quite pointing away either. Commander Solara walked ahead, her posture rigid. She hadn't spoken since they left the border station. Eric's communicator had been confiscated. His superiors were probably losing their minds right now, but there was nothing he could do about that. They reached a medical bay where teams of doctors worked over Kira. The girl lay on a platform that adjusted to support her small body. Machines beeped and hummed around her. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steady but shallow. Solara moved to her daughter's side immediately. She placed her hand on Kira's forehead, speaking softly in their language. The words sounded like music mixed with rainfall. One of the doctors approached Solara and spoke rapidly. Eric caught bits of meaning from their gestures.
"Surgery, soon."
Complicated. Solara's shoulders tightened, but she nodded. Kira's eyes opened slowly. She looked around the room with confusion until she spotted Eric standing by the doorway. Her hand lifted slightly, reaching toward him. Eric glanced at Solara, who watched him with an expression he couldn't read. She gave a small nod. Eric approached the medical platform carefully. "Hey there," he said gently. "You're in a hospital now. These people are going to help you feel better." Kira didn't understand the words, but she wrapped her small fingers around his hand. Her grip was weak but determined. She said something in Velthrin, her voice barely above a whisper. Solara translated quietly. "She says you are her sky friend. She says you pulled her from the fire." "I did," Eric confirmed, "and you're very brave." The doctors needed to prepare Kira for surgery. Solara spoke to her daughter in soothing tones, but when they tried to take her to the operating chamber, Kira became distressed. She held onto Eric's hand tighter, her eyes wide with fear. Solara spoke sharply to the medical team. They hesitated, glancing between the commander and the human. Finally, Solara turned to Eric. "She wants you to stay with her until she falls asleep. Will you do this?"
"Of course."
They allowed Eric to walk beside the platform as they moved Kira to the surgical area. He kept talking to her in a calm, steady voice, telling her about Earth, about oceans and mountains and things she'd never seen. It didn't matter that she didn't understand.
His voice seemed to comfort her.
When the anesthesia began to work, Kira's grip slowly loosened. Her eyes drooped. Eric stayed until her hand went completely slack and her breathing settled into the deep rhythm of sleep. Solara watched the entire time from the observation window. The surgery took 4 hours. Eric was given a small room to wait in, though the door was clearly locked from the outside. A guard stood beyond it. He was a guest, Solara had said. But he was also a prisoner. He sat on the bench that served as furniture and thought about what he'd done. Leaving the station, crossing into enemy territory. His career was probably over. At minimum, he'd face a court-martial when he got back. If he got back. The door opened. Solara entered alone, without guards this time. She looked exhausted. The surgical markings on her uniform indicated she'd been in the operating room. Kira will recover, she said. The doctors repaired the damage to her leg. She will need time to heal, but she will walk again. Eric let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. That's good. That's really good. Solara sat on the bench across from him. For a moment, she was just a tired mother, not a military commander. You saved her life. If you had followed your protocols, if you had waited for our ships to arrive, she would have died in that fire. I couldn't let that happen. Why not? We are enemies. Your people and mine have been fighting for 3 years. You have lost friends to Velthran weapons, yes? Eric nodded slowly. I have. And I'm sure you've lost people to human weapons. My partner, Kira's other parent.
2 years ago.
Silara's voice was quiet but steady. So I ask you again, why save the child of your enemy? Eric met her eyes. 'Cause she's a child. That matters more than anything else. Solara studied him for a long time. Your superiors are demanding your return. They say we have taken you prisoner.
They threaten consequences.
What did you tell them? That you are under protective custody. That Kira has bonded with you, and separating you now would harm her recovery. Solara leaned forward slightly. This is partly true. She asks for you. She trusts you. But it is also convenient for me. Convenient how? You are proof, Solara said. Proof that humans can show compassion, even to their enemies. My people need to see this, and I need time to understand what it means. Eric wasn't sure what to say to that. Solara stood and moved to the door. You will stay in my family residence during Kira's recovery. You will be allowed freedom within the medical facility in my home, but you cannot leave. Guards will accompany you when needed, do you understand? I understand. Good. Kira will wake soon. She will want to see her sky friend. Over the next few weeks, Eric settled into a strange new routine. Silara's home was part of a military complex, but it had space and light. Gardens grew outside the windows filled with plants that looked almost like earth flowers but smelled completely different. Kira's recovery room became Eric's second home. He spent hours with her every day. At first they communicated through gestures and drawings. Eric taught her simple English words. Sky. Friend. Smile. Tree. Kira taught him Velthran words in return, laughing when he mispronounced them. He brought her games from the recreation supplies, simple puzzles and pattern-matching exercises. Kira loved them, her face lighting up each time she solved one. The medical staff began to warm to Eric when they saw how much their young patient improved with his visits. Solara watched often from the doorway, her expression unreadable. Sometimes she joined them, sitting quietly while Eric told stories or helped Kira with physical therapy exercises. She never stayed long, always called away by military duties. One evening, Kira fell asleep earlier than usual. Eric was putting away the games when Solara entered and sat in the chair beside her daughter's bed. She laughs now, Solara said softly. Before the crash after her other parent died, she stopped laughing. For a year, I could not make her smile. You have given me back something I thought was lost forever, Solara continued. She looked at him directly. Your people want you returned. They say this situation cannot continue. But Kira needs you. She is not ready to lose another person she cares about. What are you saying? I am saying you will remain here until I decide otherwise, even if it causes problems. Even if it costs me. Sylar's voice was firm. My daughter's happiness is worth more than politics. Eric looked at Kira's sleeping face, peaceful and content. He thought about his own family, his career, his life on the other side of the border. Everything he'd known was slipping away. But when Kira woke the next morning and called him her sky friend with pure joy in her voice, Eric realized he didn't want to leave. Not yet. Maybe not ever. 3 months passed, like water flowing downstream. Eric learned to navigate Solara's world, one careful step at a time. The guards who once watched him with suspicion now nodded greetings. The medical staff asked his opinion on Kira's progress. He was no longer just the human prisoner. He was becoming something else, though Eric wasn't sure what to call it. Kira's leg healed stronger each week. She could walk now with only a slight limp that the doctors promised would fade completely. Eric helped her practice every day, holding her hand as she moved through the garden paths. She chattered constantly in a mix of Velthran and English, teaching him her language while learning his. Sky friend, look, Kira said one afternoon, pointing at a cluster of purple flowers. These are memory blooms. Mama planted them when my other parent went to the stars. Eric knelt beside her. The flowers did look special, their petals catching light in unusual ways. They're beautiful. Mama talks to them sometimes. She tells them about her day. She says it helps. Kira touched one gently. Do you have someone who went to the stars? Eric thought about the friends he'd lost in the war. I do. Several people. Does it stop hurting? The question caught Eric off guard. He looked at the small girl who had already lost so much. No, but it hurts less over time. And remembering the good things helps. Kira nodded seriously. Then she smiled. I'm glad you didn't go to the stars. I'm glad the fire didn't take you. Me too. They continued walking through the garden. Eric noticed Solara watching from an upper window. She did that often, observing them from a distance. She was always busy with military matters, always stressed by the weight of her responsibilities, but she made time for these moments, watching her daughter laugh and play. That evening, after Kira went to bed, Solara invited Eric to share a meal. It was the first time they'd eaten together without Kira present. The dining area was simple but comfortable, filled with the warm glow of bioluminescent fixtures. The medical staff says Kira can be discharged soon, Solara said, serving them both from dishes Eric couldn't identify. She is healthy enough to resume normal activities. Eric tried the food cautiously. It tasted like spiced vegetables mixed with something nutty. Not bad. That's wonderful news. It means you will move here permanently. To the family residence. Solara met his eyes. Unless you wish to return to your people now, Eric set down his utensil. Do I have that choice? You have always had that choice. I said you would stay until I decided otherwise. I have decided. If you want to leave, I will arrange safe transport back to the border station. The offer hung in the air between them. Eric thought about his old life. His career. His friends and family back on Earth. 3 months ago, he would have jumped at the chance to return. Now, he wasn't sure. What about Kira? He asked. She will be sad. Very sad. Solara's voice was carefully neutral. But children are resilient. She will adjust. And you? What do you want? Solara was quiet for a long moment. I want what is best for my daughter. You have become important to her. You make her happy in ways I cannot. But keeping you here has created problems. What kind of problems? Political ones. Military ones. Solara pushed her plate aside. There are leaders in my government who think I am weak. They say I keep a human prisoner as a pet. They say I am a fool who has forgotten we are at war. Eric frowned. I'm causing trouble for you. Yes, but that is my concern, not yours. Solara stood and walked to the window. Tomorrow, your commanding officers are sending an official delegation.
They want you back. They are offering things in exchange.
Prisoner swaps. Technology trades. They are making it very difficult for me to refuse. Then don't refuse. Let me go back. Solara turned to face him. Is that what you want? Eric opened his mouth to say yes. The word didn't come. He thought about Kira's laugh, the way she held his hand during physical therapy, the stories they shared, the garden walks. Somewhere along the way, this little girl had become family to him. I don't know, he admitted. Part of me wants my old life back, but another part doesn't want to leave her. Or you. Solara's expression shifted slightly. Me? You've been kind to me, even when you didn't have to be. You let me be part of your family. Eric stood and moved closer. I know I'm a prisoner here, technically, but it hasn't felt that way for a while now. What has it felt like? Like home. The word surprised both of them. Solara looked away, her scales shifting color slightly in what Eric had learned was a sign of emotional response. You cannot stay just for Kira's sake, she said quietly. That is not fair to you. You have your own life. Your own family. My family will understand. I've been sending them messages through the diplomatic channels. They know I'm safe. They know I'm here because I choose to be. But your career is over. Your military will not take you back as you were. Eric shrugged. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. I've learned more in 3 months here than in years of border patrol. I understand your people now. I see that you're not so different from us. Solara moved back to the table and sat heavily. The delegation tomorrow will pressure me. They will threaten. They will offer things my government cannot easily refuse. What will you tell them? I don't know yet. She looked tired again, the weight of command pressing down on her. What would you have me say? Eric sat across from her. Tell them I'm staying, not as a prisoner. As something else. What else could you be? A bridge? Someone who understands both sides. Eric leaned forward. Think about it. How many humans and Velthrans have actually lived together peacefully? How many have learned each other's languages, shared meals, become friends? You think one person can make a difference? One person already has. Kira doesn't see humans as enemies anymore. Neither do your medical staff. Neither do your guards. That's how change starts. Small. Silara studied him carefully. You are naive, or very brave. Perhaps both. Probably both, Eric agreed with a small smile. A sound came from the hallway. Kira appeared in her sleeping clothes, rubbing her eyes. Mama? Sky friend? Why are you still awake? Solara's stern commander expression melted instantly. Just talking, little star. Come here. Kira climbed into her mother's lap, though she was getting too big for it. She looked between the two adults. Are you talking about Eric leaving? The question hung heavy in the air. Solara stroked her daughter's hair. Would you be very sad if he did? Yes. Very, very sad. Kira looked at Eric with wide eyes. Don't go. Please don't go. You're part of our family now. Eric felt something break open in his chest. Solara met his eyes over Kira's head. In that moment, something passed between them. Understanding. Agreement. A shared commitment. I'm not going anywhere, Eric said softly. Kira smiled and settled against her mother, satisfied. Solara kept her eyes on Eric, and for the first time, he saw something in them beyond gratitude or political calculation. He saw hope. The delegation arrived at dawn. Eric watched from an upper window as 3 military transports landed in the courtyard. Human officers emerged, their uniforms crisp and formal. He recognized 2 of them, Colonel Hayes, his former commanding officer, and Lieutenant Karen Foster, who had served with him at the border station. Solara appeared beside him, already dressed in her formal commander's attire. Her scales gleamed with the deep blue that indicated high status. Are you ready for this? Not really, Eric admitted, but I don't think I have a choice. There is always a choice. Solara's hand briefly touched his shoulder. Remember that. The meeting took place in Solara's formal conference chamber. Velthran officials lined one side of the long table. Human delegates sat opposite them. Eric was placed between both groups, a physical representation of the problem they were trying to solve. Colonel Hayes spoke first, his voice firm and controlled. Commander Solara, we appreciate your care of Lieutenant Wade during his time here. However, 3 months is long enough. We want our officer returned. Lieutenant Wade is free to leave whenever he chooses, Solara responded calmly. He has not been held prisoner. Then why is he still here? Lieutenant Foster asked, her tone sharp. Eric, what's going on? Your family is worried. We're all worried. Eric met her eyes. I'm staying because I want to, Karen. Kira needs me. Kira's not your responsibility, Colonel Hayes said. Your duty is to your own people, to humanity. My duty is to do what's right, Eric replied. And right now, that means being here. The colonel's face hardened. That's not how military service works, Lieutenant. You don't get to decide where you're stationed based on personal feelings. One of the Velthran officials, an older male with silver markings, spoke in their language. Silara translated. Councilmember Duran says that Lieutenant Wade has provided valuable service to our people. He has shown that humans are capable of compassion. This is important for future relations. Future relations? Colonel Hayes leaned forward. Commander, let's be clear. We're still technically at war. This ceasefire is fragile. Having one of our officers living in your home, becoming attached to your family, creates complications neither of us can afford. Then perhaps we should discuss ending the war permanently, Silara said. The room went silent. Even the other Velthran officials looked surprised. Lieutenant Foster recovered first. That's not something we can negotiate here. Peace talks require authorization from the highest levels. I understand, but how can we discuss peace when we cannot even trust each other with one person? Silara gestured to Eric. He stayed to protect my daughter. He could have left dozens of times. He chose not to. Does that mean nothing? It means he's been compromised, Colonel Hayes said bluntly. No offense, Wade, but you've gone native. You're too close to this situation to think clearly. Eric felt anger rise in his chest. I'm thinking more clearly than I ever have, sir. I've lived with the people we've been fighting. They're not monsters. They're just people trying to protect what they love. Same as us. That's exactly what I mean, the colonel said. You've lost perspective. A younger Velthran officer stood abruptly, speaking rapidly in their language. Solara's expression tightened. She responded sharply, but the officer continued, his voice rising. Lieutenant Foster leaned toward Eric. What's he saying? I'm not sure. My Velthran isn't perfect yet. But Eric caught enough words to understand. Weakness. Dishonor. Human contamination. Solara stood, her voice cutting through the argument like a blade. She spoke in English now, for everyone to hear. Captain Vrel suggests that keeping Lieutenant Wade here makes me appear weak to my own people. He is correct. There are many who question my judgment, but I do not make decisions based on appearances. I make them based on what is right. Captain Vrel responded in Velthran, his tone confrontational. Solara's scales darkened, a sign of anger Eric had learned to recognize. Enough, she said quietly. But the word carried weight. This meeting is over. I will give you my decision tomorrow. The human delegates protested, but Solara was already leaving. Eric followed her out, with guards quickly moving to escort the visitors back to their transports. In the hallway, Sylara stopped and placed her hand against the wall. Her breathing was controlled, but Eric could see the stress in her posture. That went badly, Eric said. Captain Vrel is organizing opposition against me. He has support from several council members. Solara turned to face him. If I continue to refuse your return, they may remove me from command. If I send you back, Kira will be devastated. There has to be another option. I cannot see one. Solara started walking toward her private quarters. Eric followed. Your colonel is right about one thing. The ceasefire is fragile. Small incidents could restart the war. And you have become a symbol. To some, you represent hope for peace. To others, you represent weakness and betrayal. They reached her rooms. Kira was in the garden, playing with her learning tablets. She saw them through the window and waved happily. The sight seemed to cause Solara physical pain. She has already lost one parent, Solara said quietly. I cannot bear to watch her lose another person she loves. Another person? Eric asked carefully. Solara met his eyes. She is not the only one who has grown attached to you. The admission hung in the air between them. Eric's heart beat faster. Solara! An alarm shrieked through the compound. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Guards rushed past, weapons ready. Solara's communicator came alive with urgent messages. She listened, her expression growing more serious with each word. There's been an attack on the neutral zone station. Multiple casualties, both human and Velthran. Eric felt ice in his stomach. Who? Extremists from both sides, working together. Solara was already moving, her commander's training taking over. They want to restart the war. They're trying to destroy the ceasefire. We have to stop them. We? You are not a soldier here, Eric. But I know that station better than anyone. I served there for 2 years. I know every corridor, every security system. Eric grabbed her arm. You need me. Solara hesitated, then she nodded. Come, but you follow my orders exactly. Understood? Understood. They ran together through the compound. Sylara barked commands in Velthran. Ships were being prepared, troops assembled. The human delegates were being secured in a safe location. Everything moved with military precision. In the armory, Solara handed Eric a protective vest. Put this on. What about Kira? My security team will protect her. She will be safe here. Solara checked her own equipment. But she will not be safe if war starts again. None of our children will be. They boarded the transport ship with 24 Velthran soldiers. As they lifted off, Eric looked back at the compound. He could see Kira's small figure in the garden window, watching the ships leave. Sylara followed his gaze. When this is over, if we survive, we will find a solution. Together. Together, Eric agreed. The ship accelerated toward the neutral zone, toward danger, toward a moment that would decide everything. Eric checked his equipment and prepared himself for whatever came next. He had crossed so many lines already. What was one more? The neutral zone station appeared through the viewport, damaged and dark. Sections of the outer hull showed blast marks. Emergency lights flickered where main power had failed. Eric's chest tightened as he saw the place that had been his home for 2 years torn apart by violence. Solara stood beside him, studying the tactical display. 3 ships, 2 human, 1 Velthran. They're still docked on the far side. The extremists are inside trying to destroy the communication arrays. If they succeed, both sides lose contact, Eric said. Without confirmation of what's happening, military command on both sides might assume the worst and respond with force. Exactly. That's what they want. Confusion. Fear. War. Solara turned to her troops and gave rapid orders in Velthran. Then she switched to English for Eric's benefit. We dock on the near side. Move quietly. Secure the communication center first. The transport connected with the station's emergency airlock. Eric felt the familiar clunk of docking clamps engaging. Memories flooded back, walking these corridors, monitoring the border. The routine that had been his life before everything changed. Silara's team moved with practiced efficiency. Eric stayed close to her, following hand signals he'd learned over the past months. The corridors were dark except for emergency strips along the floor. Bodies lay in some sections, both human and Velthran. Eric forced himself to keep moving. They reached a junction where 3 corridors met. Solara held up her hand, stopping the group. Voices echoed from ahead. Human voices. Angry and determined. Eric recognized one of them. Lieutenant Danny Crawford. They'd served together. Danny had lost his brother in the war 2 years ago and never recovered from it.
Danny? Eric called out. It's Eric Wade.
Don't shoot. Silence. Then Danny's voice, suspicious and hard. Wade? We heard you'd gone over to their side.
I haven't gone anywhere. I'm trying to stop this before more people die.
Eric stepped into view slowly, hands visible. Sylara and her team held position behind him. Danny, you know this is wrong. Attacking the station won't bring your brother back. Danny emerged from the shadows, rifle raised. 2 other humans flanked him, their weapons also ready. My brother died because of them. Because they attacked our colony ships. And how many Velthran families lost people because we attacked their mining stations? Eric kept his voice calm. The war has cost everyone too much. This won't fix anything. It'll make me feel better. Danny's finger moved toward the trigger. A blast rang out, but not from Danny's weapon. One of his companions fired at Silara's position. The Velthran troops returned fire immediately. Energy bolts lit up the corridor. Eric dove for cover as the firefight erupted around him. Silara's voice cut through the chaos, ordering her troops to use non-lethal settings. But the extremists weren't showing the same restraint. Eric saw one of the Velthran soldiers go down injured but alive. Danny was moving toward the communication center. Eric realized the firefight was a distraction. He broke from cover and ran after his former colleague, ignoring Solara's shout behind him. The communication center doors were sealed. Danny was working on the override panel, setting charges. Eric tackled him before he could activate them. They crashed to the floor, struggling. Danny was bigger and stronger, fueled by rage and grief. You traitor, Danny snarled, landing a punch that split Eric's lip. You're protecting the enemy. They're not the enemy, Eric gasped, blocking another hit. Not anymore, we can end this. It'll never end. Not until they pay for what they did. Danny's hand found his sidearm. Eric grabbed his wrist, redirecting the weapon just as it fired. The blast scorched the wall behind them. They wrestled for control, both breathing hard. Solara appeared in the doorway, her weapon trained on Danny. Let him go. Danny laughed bitterly. See, Wade? She'll kill me the first chance she gets. That's who they are. If I wanted you dead, you would be dead already, Solara said coldly. I want you alive. I want you to see that there is another way. There is no other way. Danny's grip on his weapon tightened. Eric made his choice. He released Danny's wrist and placed himself between his former colleague and Solara. If you want to shoot her, you'll have to shoot me first. Danny stared at him in disbelief. You'd die for one of them? I'd die to stop this war from starting again. To protect Kira and every other child on both sides who deserves a future without fighting. Eric's voice was steady despite his racing heart. Danny, your brother wouldn't want this. He was a good person. He believed in protecting people, not killing them. Something in Danny's expression cracked. His weapon lowered slightly. I miss him so much. I know, and I'm sorry. But this won't bring him back. It'll only create more people who feel exactly like you do right now. Danny's weapon fell to the floor. He slumped against the wall, all the fight draining out of him. Solara's soldiers moved in quickly, securing him without violence. The rest of the extremists were captured within the hour. The Velthran ship tried to escape but was disabled by Solara's backup team. No one else died. The communication arrays were intact. Eric stood in the observation deck where everything had started months ago. Solara joined him, a medical kit in her hand. She began treating the cut on his lip without asking. "You placed yourself in front of a weapon for me," she said quietly. "You would have done the same for me." "Yes, but I am a soldier. It is my duty." "Maybe it's mine too now." Eric winced as she applied antiseptic. "What happens next?" "Both our governments are shocked. The attack failed, but it showed how easily extremists can manipulate the situation." Solara finished with the medical kit and set it aside. "They are calling for an emergency summit. Real peace talks. They want representatives from both sides who understand the other culture." Eric understood before she said it. "They want us. You know humans. I know Velthrans. Together we understand both." Solara moved closer. "But it means you cannot return to normal military service. Your path forward will be different. Difficult. I stopped expecting a normal life the moment I pulled Kira from that crash." "Speaking of Kira," Solara pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic image appeared. Kira's face, recorded earlier. She was holding one of the memory blooms from the garden. "Sky friend, Mama said you had to be brave today. I planted this flower for you. Come home safe. I love you." Eric felt his throat tighten. He looked at Solara and saw his own emotions reflected in her eyes. "She is not the only one," Solara said softly, echoing her words from before. But this time, she didn't look away. "I have feelings for you, Eric Wade. Feelings that go beyond gratitude. I do not know if this is wise or appropriate, but it is true." Eric reached for her hand. Their fingers intertwined, human and Velthrin, different but fitting together perfectly. "I feel the same way. I have for a while now. Then we face the future together. All three of us." 6 months later, Eric stood in front of a classroom filled with children. Half were human. Half were Velthrin. They sat next together, working on a shared project about their different home worlds. The new integrated school had been Solara's idea, but Eric had helped design the curriculum. It was the first of many planned across the border regions. Small steps toward lasting peace. Kira sat in the front row, translating for a human boy who was struggling with Velthrin pronunciation. She'd appointed herself as the unofficial teacher's assistant. Her leg had healed completely. She ran everywhere now, full of energy and joy. Eric looked up as Solara appeared in the doorway. She wore civilian clothes now, having stepped down from military command to focus on the peace initiative. Some had called her a traitor. Others called her a hero. She didn't seem to care much about either label. She wore a small pendant around her neck. Eric had given it to her last month, a human custom to show commitment. In return, she'd given him a Velthran family token, the same one Kira wore. They were building something new together. A family that crossed species boundaries. A relationship that proved peace was possible. "How is the class going?" Solara asked, moving to stand beside him. "Really well. They're designing a joint space station where both species can live and work together. Children have better vision than adults sometimes." Solara watched her daughter help another student. "They see possibilities where we only see problems." Eric put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, a gesture that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "We're making it work, yes. One day at a time." The children's laughter filled the room as someone's model space station collapsed comically. Kira helped rebuild it, showing both human and Velthran students how to make the structure stronger by combining their different approaches. Eric thought about the moment he'd pulled her from that burning ship. How one choice, one act of compassion, had changed everything. He'd lost his old life but gained something better. A family, a purpose, a future where children of different worlds learn together instead of fighting. Solara squeezed his hand. "Ready to go home?" "Always," Eric replied. They walked out together as the class continued their work, building bridges in miniature that would someday span the stars.